Good morning, everybody. This is Becky Thompson with the Washington Student Achievement Council. Thanks so much for you all logging on and joining us this morning when we talk about the Teacher Shortage Conditional Grant Program. Just a couple logistics before we get into the training. I wanted to let you all know that we are recording this webinar. This is so we can make it available to you and others that might not be able to join today later. So it is recording. We also will be placing your lines on mute just so we reduce the amount of background noise. But we encourage you, if you have questions along the way, to use the chat feature, and then we'll pause throughout and turn the lines back on. But before I do that, can someone just indicate that they can hear me okay, either by chat or by letting me know online whether or not they can hear me all right?
Becky, I can hear you.
Great, good. Glad to. Great, thank you. So I get the easy job. All I really have to do is introduce my colleagues here with me today. With me is Ann Boyle. Ann, thank you. She's doing a lot of the technical assistance here today on the webinar, as well as Jay Lee Schultz, who will be really leading the presentation throughout. But the three of us are here at the Student Achievement Council. So welcome, and I'll hand that over to Jay Lee.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today to go over the certification process for the new Teacher Shortage Conditional Grant Program. Just to give a brief overview, again, just to remind you that there were two new grant programs that came out of Senate Bill 6455 last session back in June of 2016. And the Teacher Shortage Conditional Grant is to encourage individuals to become teachers by providing financial aid while they're enrolled in their prep program, and then they take on a teaching service obligation in exchange for the grant award. And then the other program is the Student Teaching Residency Grant Program that supports prep program candidates who are student teaching at Title I public schools. Some of you were involved in the certification process for the Student Teaching Grant. We just ran the first cycle of that earlier this spring. So you may be familiar with the process. It's going to look similar for the Teacher Shortage Grant, but it's going to be done more through the portal. So we'll dive into that. And the training today focuses on the Teacher Shortage Conditional Grant, but just wanted to remind you that both of these programs came out of that bill and that they have a similar certification process. Also, just to remind you, we have information posted at the website readysetgrad.org/teachers. This is where we send students who are interested in learning more about the program. It goes over both of these programs and the eligibility requirements for them. And this also shows the dates for them. So as I mentioned, we ran our first cycle of the Student Teaching Residency Grant earlier this spring in February. And we've wrapped up that one at this point. And now the Teacher Shortage Conditional Grant, we ran that application cycle in the month of May and are now reviewing those applications that came in. So we're going to focus today on the Teacher Shortage Conditional Grant, and I'm going to right now give a brief overview of what the awarding process entails from just kind of a high-level overview. Then we'll discuss the eligibility requirements for that program and the awarding preferences. And then we'll dive back into the awarding process here and focus especially on the certification process, going into detail and showing a demonstration of what that will look like in the portal. But just to begin and lay out for you what the process would look like in general, WASAC is responsible for selecting potential recipients, and we're going to over-select so that we also have information on potential alternates. We do expect that some folks who are offered a grant may end up declining, or they may end up withdrawing between now and when they would enroll. So we want to have some alternates in place. Once we've identified who the potential recipients and alternates are, we will then send out an email notification to the FAA's to your institutional email that will notify you that your list of potential recipients are ready and available for you in the portal. And then you'll log in there and provide information on them to certify their eligibility and help us determine their award amounts. Once you've provided that information, WASEC will use that to make the final selection of awardees and determine those award amounts. And then as far as payments go, those will be requested on a term-by-term basis through the portal, and WASEC will send the funds via electronic fund transfer. So as I mentioned, we'll be returning to talk about that awarding process in detail and especially the certification step. But before we dive into that, I just wanted to go over the eligibility requirements for this grant. And so what I'm showing here are the minimum qualifications in order to qualify for consideration. And our application was designed in such a way to screen on most of these things. So we already have a pretty good sense that nearly all of the applicants to the program should hopefully meet these minimum qualifications. So first of all, they have to be enrolled in a preparation program that's been approved by the Professional Educator Standards Board. They need to be enrolled at least half-time and be maintaining satisfactory academic progress. The ones that are highlighted in that different font color we're just highlighting for you the parts that you'll be helping us determine through the financial aid certification. So you will be indicating for us whether they are in fact maintaining SAP and also their enrollment level as well. And I do want to point out too that this was open to candidates enrolled in any type of prep program, so whether they're an undergraduate or a graduate, or if they're doing a post-baccalaureate certificate, all program types qualify. The next one, they have to demonstrate unmet financial needs. Oh, and we will be using state SAP requirements, and some of those details are included for you in the program manual as well, but great question. And please do chime in if you need clarifications like that. We'll make sure we have all those bases covered in our guidance. So for unmet financial need, we required applicants to have completed the 2017-18 financial aid application prior to applying for our grant program, and we did a check on that, so we know that they've all completed that step. But during the financial aid certification, you'll be providing some basic information about their financial aid package to help us determine if they have an unmet financial need. In order to qualify for consideration, they also had to address one of the identified shortage area needs. So these are areas where there are a need for teachers in particular subject areas, or districts that are dealing with a teacher shortage crisis, or the applicant could get a district to sponsor them if they were addressing a unique local need. So that was one of the minimum qualifications in order to be considered for the grant. They also have to commit to the teaching service obligation. So for each year of funding, they commit to teaching for 2 years, or if they're teaching in their shortage area, that is reduced down to 1 year service obligation. Continuing on with a couple of more eligibility requirements, they cannot have an existing Washington State service obligation. So if they are a recipient of another program such as the Alternative Route Conditional Scholarship, that one also has a service obligation tied to it, and we can't have them take on more than one service obligation at the same time. So that would disqualify them. I do want to clarify that they can be enrolled in an alternative route prep program. That's perfectly fine. It's just that they can't be a recipient of the Alternative Route Conditional Scholarship. We know that about half of the people enrolled in alternative routes are already receiving this scholarship, but the other half of them who do not have that scholarship could qualify for this one. And then this is a question, we're checking this in our database, but we do ask you to indicate as well for us during the certification whether or not you can see that they're receiving the scholarship. Also, they cannot owe a repayment to any state or federal grant or scholarship, nor be in default on a state or federal student loan. So that's a standard requirement across state financial aid programs. And likewise, they cannot be pursuing a degree in theology. So for the institutions that have degrees in theology, we'd ask that you would double check that for us as well. So what I just went over were the minimum qualifications, and we still received very high number of applications compared to what we can actually fund. So we've actually received 885 applications for this program and anticipate awarding only about 50. So we'll be using these awarding priorities to help us select the folks that get awarded. So we're looking at groups that are traditionally underrepresented among the teacher workforce when you compare the teacher workforce to the student population. We're looking at financial need. So as I mentioned earlier, unmet financial need is one of the minimum qualifications. And then on top of that, we're also looking at financial need as an awarding priority. And for this, we're looking at the distribution of our applicants on the median family income percent and have scoring based on where they fall on that distribution relative to other applicants. We also are considering their experience working with children and youth, their enrollment in an alternative route teacher certification program, so there is a small preference for that, and also school district commitment to hire for folks who are able to secure that commitment from a district.
Julie, I'm going to just interject really quickly here. This is Becky. I just wanted to say that this financial need that we're talking about on this piece about the awarding priorities is in fact one that we are doing on our end at the Student Achievement Council at this point in the process. What we're talking about is we're selecting potential recipients as well as some alternatives. And so we have access to FAFSA and to WASFA, income information. And so we are doing that in terms of really looking at income, comparing it to the median family income here in the state as well as all the other applicants. So so this piece is really a WASAC piece on this slide, not to necessarily be confused with financial need and some of the questions we're asking you about expected family contribution, cost of attendance, to get at that unmet financial need that we will be discussing in more detail here in a minute.
Okay, so moving on to talk about award amounts, we're expecting a maximum award amount of about $10,000 for the 17-18 academic year, and we're anticipating about 50 recipients. So this amount was arrived at after talking with our stakeholder work group and focus groups that we had done with the potential applicant target audience. And we arrived at this number because it has to be a substantial award given that there's a teaching service obligation tied to it. So we are expecting the maximum to stay right around this amount of $10,000 here. And with our appropriation at $468,000, that's why we're anticipating just about 50 recipients for this first cycle of this program. The individual student awards will vary based on their unmet need, and so this is where the certification step comes into play, where the information you provide to us on their package will help us determine those custom award amounts. And this award can be used to replace loans not to exceed need. We will be prorating the award amounts for partial year enrollment and part-time enrollment, and then the funds will be dispersed term by term in the 17-18 academic year. In this webinar, we're not going to talk very much about the payment side of things because our IT team is building this really cool payment system for us in the portal right now, but it's not quite ready for us to preview for you just yet. So we plan to follow up with another webinar specifically on the payment side of things. But we do invite any questions you have for us later on when we open up the phone lines. So now we're going to return to talking about the awarding process here and focusing specifically on the certification step. So this, again, just to reiterate, after WASAC selects the potential recipients and alternates, you'd receive a notification email with a login bringing you to the portal. And we're going to just do a demonstration of this for you right now. Okay, so when you get your email notification, you'll have a link in there and you'll log into the portal, and this is the first screen that you will see. And then we're just using Heritage University as the example here, so you would see your institution up here. And you'd see a summary view with a list of each of your recipients. And this is roughly the number of recipients we'd expect for each institution. It really could be just 1 or 2 for an institution, or maybe up to 5 or 10 at most, but really only just a handful of recipients that we would expect for each institution. The program manual will be linked right here for you for convenience so that you can pull up those instructions at any time. And in order to enter information on a student, you would click on their name, which will bring up a pop-up window where you enter the data for that particular student. And then when you're done entering their information, you click Save, which returns you to this summary screen where you can select the next student. And then once you'll see their information populating in here as you enter it one by one. And when you've completed all of your students, then you click this button right up here in the upper right, Submit Certifications, which then notifies WASAC that you've completed it. At that point, your screen will be locked from further editing, so you won't be able to make any more changes after you've submitted it. If you needed to make an update, you'd have to contact WASAC staff, and we could unlock this for you. So I'll now demonstrate how to enter information on an individual student. When you click on their name, it opens the pop-up window. And we have a box here where you can enter their college ID number if you wanted to, in case this is going to help you down the road when we send payments, if it helps to have the college ID number to help you locate the student. So this is optional, but you could enter a number here. Now these are our screener questions. The first 3 questions here are screeners where, depending on how you answer them, you may or may not need to provide the additional financial package details on that student. So we first have you answer these. Again, if they are receiving the alternative route scholarships, they do not qualify for this program. Maintaining satisfactory academic progress would have to be a yes in order to qualify. And then this question on whether their financial aid award is complete, you have 3 options. You can indicate that it is final, that it is an estimate at this time, or that it is not complete, which you might use if the person's record is in verification. Or it's also possible that some of the students in your list may not actually end up enrolling in your institution. We have some applicants who let us know that they had actually applied to multiple programs and had not yet decided. So in the event that someone opted to go somewhere else, you might indicate no here. And we would ask that you leave a comment for us if you can in these circumstances to kind of explain, you don't see the student or what's going on, or if they're in verification. Any type of comment you can leave here to help explain to us. So for example, if this person was in verification, that's all that you would enter, and then you would click Save. Oops, I have timed out, so 1 second while I log back into my account. So once I entered that, you'll see that when I clicked Save, the individual pop-up window closed, and it brought me back to the summary screen, and it shows the responses I had indicated for that person. And these details are grayed out because there's no need to provide that information since the person is in verification. So I'm going to demonstrate for another student here.
Julie, while you do that, I'm just going to mention that if they are in a verification, if their application is being verified, it doesn't mean that they're now disqualified to be awarded. But we are asking that if you don't believe that they'll be verified by the point in time where we're asking you to submit your certifications, that you go ahead and just let us know that that is not, that they don't have an award at this point. And we'll likely come back and ask you for that information maybe at a different point in time if in fact they sort of end up making that last list. In other words, they're not an alternative or other things that if, so there could be a case where you submit them as not having a financial aid award, but they will have a financial aid award later. We don't want you to hold up all of the other certifications. So go ahead and just send us that back. So if you have a sense of even when they might be verified, that would be helpful in the comments, but it's not required.
Okay, so for this example, I'm going to show what happens if the student passes the screeners. So they're not receiving the alt routes, they are maintaining satisfactory academic progress, and their award is complete. Then it will display the details that we need on their package and enrollment. And so you would just type in amounts here for each of these fields. And we ask you to select their grade level, and these are using the definitions that are in the unit record report manual. And then you would select their enrollment here. So if you have a summer leader term, you'd use the summer 1. And if you have a trailer, you'd use summer 2. Fall, winter, spring for quarters, or just fall and spring for semesters. And this is their expected enrollment, so we know that this could change, but we're just what you're expecting them to be enrolled for the school year. And so once you've entered and hit save, that window closes and it shows their details here. So you would go through and do this for each of the students here, and then when you're all done, you would click this button here, Submit Certifications. And it's not letting me do it, and I'm guessing it's because I haven't entered for each student here. So I can continue to do that if Becky wants to. Maybe we'll open the lines and answer some questions while I'm filling out the rest of these students. So I'm going to unmute at this point so that if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to ask Becky, and I'll continue to go through these examples.
Yeah, any questions so far? And we're looking at chat as well, so phone lines and chat open. Okay, well, I'm going to then ask you all a question, and you could maybe type or chime in. Is it feeling kind of intuitive? I'm hoping that that's the case if we're not getting a lot of questions.
Oh yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory.
Good.
So on the expected enrollment, do you want us to go in each quarter and update it if it's not at full time?
That will be handled not through this process, but through the process of the disbursement. So when you go to ask for the dollars and there's a change in enrollment, that's when you would there would be an opportunity for those changes to be communicated to us in that process. So that's the one that we're not quite ready to show yet. There'll be a separate another webinar, but that's a really good question. So yes, you would, in essence, you really are going to be probably valid, or you are validating every time you're asking for a disbursement their enrollment, but you wouldn't be doing it on this screen. It would be showing you what we have, based that award on, and then you either leave it as is before you go to request the disbursement, or you would make a change.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One thing I'll demonstrate here, if you've entered data on somebody and you want to come back, log back in because something's changed and you haven't submitted yet, you would just click on that student's name and all of their information is still editable. So you could add something that comes in and save it. So all of these fields are editable until you click this submit button here in the upper right corner, and at that point it locks your data.
Julie, it looks like Dina has a question that I think is somewhat related. I'm just going to read it to the group here, which is, will the data be saved if we start certification but we don't complete before we're timed out? So, right, the data would be saved in here. Whether or not you timed out, or you can actually log out of the portal, come back in a few days. It's going to be in there and be able to be editable up to the point that you submit those certifications and hit that blue button up in the right.
Okay, and so now that I've entered data on all the students, this button is now selectable where I can submit. So I can click that here. It gives you a warning saying you won't be able to make any further changes. Are you finished? And then once you click OK, it says, thank you, your student certifications have been submitted. So at that point, it's not editable anymore, and you'd have to contact WASAC staff to unlock this if you did need to make an edit. Okay, so I'm going to mute the lines again for now, and we'll, of course, open it up for more questions in a little bit. I'm going to mute for now and return to this PowerPoint. Just to wrap up the last few slides here. So we did attach a draft of the program manual to the webinar appointment sent earlier this morning. So you can take a peek at that draft of the program manual. We will be adding more detail to it, especially around the payment system that we're setting up as we are able to add those details. But what's currently in that draft will give you a good sense thank you, of what to do. We welcome any feedback you have, too, if you get the chance to review that draft. And then here's the timeline. So just to reiterate, the application was open during the month of May, closed on May 26th. And we have our training webinar today, the 5th. And we are working on reviewing that application data right now and looking at the scoring based on all of those awarding priorities. And we will have selection of the potential recipients and alternates completed by June 12th. That's a Monday. And then we have a 2-week window for the FAA certification process that we're asking you to participate in, where you'll log into the portal and do that certification step. So we ask that you complete that by Friday, June 23rd. And then WASAC will be sending out award notifications to all applicants, letting them know one way or the other whether or not they have been awarded. Those who are awarded have to log into the portal to sign a promissory note that's committing them to that teaching service obligation. So we're looking to send out these notifications by the end of June. And at the same time that we notify the applicants, will also send a notification back out to you all, letting you know that you can log back into the portal to see the final decisions in that same summary screen that we're using for certification. So there will be 2 additional columns added to the end of that screen, one that will show the award amounts. For those who are selected, their final award amount will be in there. And then there will also be a column for their promissory note. It'll be a status that will let you know once that person has gone in whether they accepted or declined the award. So you'll be able to log into your portal to view that once we send out those notifications by the end of June. And then payments for this grant will be handled term by term during the 17-18 academic year, beginning as early as August for institutions that have a summer leader term. And just a couple other details. So regarding grant repayment, this will be required if the recipient leaves school during the term of the grant. And we ask that the institution notify the recipient of their repayment status and forward that notification to WASAC on the same day so that WASAC can refer the account to our billing service. And reporting, so there is an expectation from the state legislature that WASAC do an evaluation of this program and provide reports to them. So in the event that we need information to help with those evaluation reports, we'd request that you respond to that within 30 days. I think most of the data we need, we've probably already collected through our application and through the certification, but we do just want to let you know that we will be researching how this program works and providing reports to the legislature. And we'd also like you to include this grant program in your 2017-18 unit record report as a conditional loan. So that wraps it up, and we can open it up for questions again.
Whitney has a question. She asks, will we use the same grant repayment calculator that is used for state need grant, etc., when determining the amount the student earned?
Yes. Any other questions?
I have a question. This is Kelly from University of Puget Sound. If this is reported as a conditional loan, if the student doesn't complete their conditions at the teaching level, does it become a loan like the federal teach grant, and what are the terms of that loan?
Yes, it does. So if they fail to complete their prep program, or if they fail to complete the teaching service obligation, in both of those situations it converts to a loan that would need to be repaid monetarily. And the terms and conditions parallel those of the federal direct subsidized program, the subsidized loan program. We do have the promissory note. We could share that with you if you're really curious about those details. That's what the applicants who are offered the grant, they'll sign that promissory note if they choose to accept the award, and it outlines in detail what all those terms and conditions are.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. Thank you so much.
Sure. Okay, so we have a question. If the program is still funded for just 1 year, that's what we know so far with this having come through from the, we have a fiscal year 17 appropriation for the first cycle of this program, being that it was established in the June 2016 bill that was passed. And so we are waiting to see the outcome of the current legislative session. And there's a lot of talk going on right now about these grant programs, and definitely a lot of interest. So we're definitely waiting to see whether it might come through in this year's budget, or if it could possibly be brought up again for the supplemental budget.
Yeah, and just to add to that, you know, it wasn't in or funding wasn't in any of the current budget proposals, the Senate or the House. But as Jaylee said, there's actually been a lot of discussion about these programs over the last couple months, actually, in the legislative session. So it really is, we really just don't know whether or not they will be funded, and that final decision will be in the budget bill. We have, though, planned for these programs in terms of like building them kind of with the assumption they would continue, you know, but knowing that it really is based on appropriation, and at the moment those proposals do not show an appropriation. So it's in a we'll wait and see mode.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, seeing none, thank you everyone for participating today. Again, we'll be recording this in case you want to reference this webinar again, and we'll be sharing an updated draft of the program manual as soon as it's available. And then just to remind you, the certification process, we're going to launch that on June 12th, so you'll be getting an email notification from us, and looking to wrap that up by Friday the 23rd. So thank you so much for your support and your participation in this program, and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye-bye.